Aloha, everyone, and welcome to another live digital kava session here on the Polynesian Eyes podcast. You have myself here from South Central Texas and Mr. Atearoa from Manurewa. Did I say that
Yes,
right,
sir.
Masi?
Yes, Manurewa. Yep.
Oh, sweet. We're excited for today. We are well overdue for a continuation of the William Mariner playlist by Kawa University. So before we get to that, Mussy, happy Sabbath over there. It's still
Mm,
Saturday here in the Western Hemisphere. So
mm.
how's everything on this Sabbath day on in Aotearoa?
Good. Can't complain. It's always a win if you can make it to church. Yeah. So, 2 hours of church. Came back. Wife made some nice garlic shrimp, and that's what I'm
Oh,
having right now. And always good. I only shave when it's Sabbath, so I'm looking pretty good with my clean
so fresh and so
shaven.
clean.
So fresh, so clean, look sharp like a good one. So and a beautiful day today in New Zealand. So I think everyone's excited in New Zealand that winter is about over, getting a bit warmer every
Mm,
day. I've started to notice just looking at my yard, it's getting warmer because you can tell the grass is just growing a bit
growing.
faster. Yeah, when it's a bit warmer and the weeds and stuff. So, but other than that, so good so far here on this side
So
of the earth. But how about you, Tua? How's everything in Texas?
another standard day here in South Central Texas. Just been did some shopping, got a couple things from Home Depot, then just had the kids do their chores. So nothing crazy. No news is good news,
Hey,
you know.
were you affected by that hurricane? Did you
No,
get
I
any
wasn't.
rain? Okay, okay,
No, that's went a little bit north of us. It's
okay.
mostly like Florida,
Florida,
North Carolina.
Alabama.
Yeah, I heard some of those areas are getting pretty rough over there.
Okay.
So with that being said, let's jump into our show today. As we mentioned, we're going to continue our series here with the William Mariner storyline with Kawa University. And, just kind of like a summary here.
Mm,
So, Urukalala and Tupou Niwa, they've assassinated, I think it's the Tuikanukupolu, because it's in the Hihifo side. And
mm,
they're gathering in Hahake. They did the assassination. They meet up in Hahake, and they happen to run into, was it Tui Halafatai on his
mm.
way back from Fiji? Talk about perfect timing, right? Got
Yeah,
some hardened, war hardened guys, been,
that's all they've been doing.
basically
No
been
cultivation.
mercenaries.
Yeah.
Exactly. So they go back to Hihifo, they do a battle there, they win, they took some casualties. And so that's where we are in the storyline right now. So we'll jump right into it.
Okay.
and they have a meeting about what they need to do. They realize that they lost a lot of men. They lost a lot of the bravest men, although they did win decisively. While they're in Hahake, Tukuaho's loyalists start gathering more men from different villages and different kolos and forts and whatnot to come help and join them. But Fina and Tupo are satisfied that they got the most important guys who are closest to Tukuaho, that they decided, okay, we're going to sail back to Hapai. They make their way up to Hapai. They stop by Nomuka, and they find that there are still Tuaha loyalists in Nomuka. They battle with them, it was a little scuffle or whatever it was, and they gain more strength from Nomuka. And they do that all the way up through Hapai, through Uiha, Lifuka, Foa, run into some opposition on the way up, but eventually they gain more men.
Just a quick thought and comment there. I wonder if that was one of the reasons why they decided not to stay and keep fighting on Tongatapu, is because they probably anticipated loyalists back in Ha'apai
Yeah.
and
Mm,
so forth would be resisting them.
yeah.
I wonder, do you know, Masi, if the Tui Halafatai guys went with them? I must, or did they stay on Tongatapu? You have any knowledge on
Guys,
that?
because Tui Halafatai, he passes away, right? He dies in that
Yes.
battle. So
Yeah,
his
because he's
followers,
sick. He's sick, and he
yeah,
basically just throws himself into the battle and
yeah.
gets killed.
And there was really no mention of the kind of like the second person in charge of that group that went to Fiji. So no, I'm not too sure with that, but I was just thinking, with Tuguaho, is that Tuguaho is? Dubo the First's great grandfather. Is that correct, or what? What?
I'm not sure actually on his connection there.
Okay, okay. I'm not too sure. See, I'm not too sure with that side, but yeah, yeah. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that they had to go back and kind of kind of squash any maybe rebellion or anything because it's to me, my understanding, there's always a strong following of whoever the Tui Tui Polu, especially with Hapai and Mabao. They seem to kind of always have some group uh,
Loyalty there.
there. I don't know. That's just to me because looks like the Tui Hatagalawa and Tui Tonga was just more of like Tongatapu in that time. In that during that time, this is when everything is kind of falling apart with the whole empire and influence of the Tui Tonga and the Tui Hatagalawa. And this is the reason why they created the third kingship to kind of do all the tasks because this is also the time when there's many assassinations happening.
Hmm.
So it makes sense why being uh being the political kingship is very difficult,
Yeah,
and it's the reason why the Tui Hatagalawa and Tui Polo was created off the branch of the Tui Tonga. But see all the
yeah.
little chaos that's kind of happening in Tonga at this time.
Not very interesting. Hey, Nacho Malo, Malo, welcome, welcome,
Malo Nacho.
Malo. You came early from 7-Eleven. Hopefully, you brought some good Mountain Dew for everyone. Yeah, so I just thought that was interesting that a couple questions. What happened to the Tui Halafatai guys? Um, I would assume, man, at that point, since they're kind of war hardened, they're probably interested in staying with Ulgalala and saying, "Hey, what are we gonna do?" Right? Because I mean, those are valuable guys who have
Yes,
that experience in war. They could be a huge impact on Ulkalala and his brother's efforts moving forward. So okay,
yeah.
10-4. That was
No,
just one.
and there's a huge advantage when you have uh, s- a group of people or an army specifically focusing on being warriors, right? Because most of the
Hmm.
time, a lot of Polynesians were the farmers and then caretakers of their land and stuff, and at the same time when it's fight then they fight, but there's a big change when you have somebody when you're doing all those three and somebody just specifically have been fighting like a whole year and they've kind of been hardened and their skills and the way of fighting is all actually is a lot more sharper. So definitely you have an advantage when you have a certain group like that that's been fighting all year round. So yeah.
10-4. 10-4. No, and then the interesting day, Nachos going straight up. No
Yeah.
chaser today. Eh? Nacho's gonna
No,
straight up on his kava today.
no new
Eee,
mata
Maria.
today, Nacho.
No,
Like the Tongans,
no new mata.
maka in America. They always say, "Where's the new mata?" Referring to Mountain Dew. Maria.
No, and actually, and to kind of make that point, one of the bringing it into like modern or current events right now, that is probably the only real positive of like the American military industrial complex, right? And we learned this from the Ukraine war, right?
Hmm.
Everybody was saying Russia was just going to come in there and just totally dominate Ukraine.
Yes.
But the reality was the Russian military. I mean, when's the last time they had a major war that they fought? World War II?
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
they were in Afghanistan for a little bit, but they weren't very successful there.
Yeah.
Um, this is the other
The only,
thing when they
yeah.
talk about China's military.
Yeah.
Really, the only military in the world that's pretty battle hardened is the US
Yes.
military, which is a pro and a con. The
Mm.
negative is why are we out in wars all the time everywhere, right? That's the negative. And all the
Yes.
money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
And this is the interesting thing, and I didn't know this. Did you know that? And I just saw this on I think the Joe Rogan podcast. He interviewed a guy and he said, did you know that Dick Cheney was the CEO of Halliburton, the military supplier?
No, but it explains why he was so eagerly. Because in my opinion, we shouldn't. I was kind of the Iraq War. We shouldn't get involved. We should just maybe get involved with where Osama bin Laden was at, which was in Afghanistan and the border of Pakistan, like in that area. But it
Mhm.
makes sense why he eagerly
He
pushed
wanted the
Bush.
war. Yeah.
Yes, because those manufacturing companies in military warfare wanted to do it to make money.
Hi, Sita Malo
Malo
Ofatu.
sita.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's interesting is that Halliburton did all the logistics for the army. So
Sheesh.
food, clothing, building the barracks,
Mm,
everything, like basically everything that had to do with what the government was doing, they had the contract for that, and then they had a no bid or no compete contract to rebuild in the places that they destroyed. That's where a lot of people are saying same thing with Ukraine,
mm,
that BlackRock's going to get the contract to rebuild Ukraine with
wow.
one of their many, many, many companies that they own. So, anyways, interesting.
Great.
Just thought that was interesting, and just to kind of prove the point,
Yeah.
the value of Tui Halafatai's guys
Yes.
coming back after being in Fiji as mercenaries for several years.
Mm,
That's a huge advantage to Ulkalala and his men. And obviously, these guys are they like that lifestyle. They're familiar with it, right? Warfare
yeah.
and what comes with it. So interesting. We'll continue the. Did you have anything to add to that, Masi?
No, no, no. Just absolutely agree with the more if you allow somebody to specialize in an area, and then that's an area you're gonna need. Like if it's warfare, most likely they'll beat the other person who's like a jack of all trades, just trying to do a bunch of things.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No, and that's the thing. China, yeah, they have a
China,
huge
Russia, yeah,
military. Russia, I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, but when you have they have larger forces, quote unquote, but they aren't battle hardened as the U.S. is.
mm.
Hey, the official chaplain is here.
Hey, Malo Brown Monk.
Malo, Malo chaplain, Brown Monk, welcome, welcome. So yeah, let's continue here. So they're back in Hapai, trying to reestablish control over there.
men
Okay.
and gain more strength. Eventually, they get to Ha'ano. Ha'ano is there, and Ha'ano seems like it was a main office in Hawaii because there was a big group in Ha'ano waiting for Finau and Tuponiua. And they get into this big old battle there in Ha'ano. And they fight and they lose men and they were able to kill a lot of them. And a lot of the bravest ones died there and they're bravest. And it was a back and forth war and battle. And eventually, Finau takes control after winning the battle in Ha'ano, takes control of all of Hawaii, and he's acknowledged king of Hawaii now. He then starts to put all the Mataapules to death, the chiefs. He starts putting the chiefs to death. The first way that they put these chiefs to death is some of them just wanted to have their brains just bashed out and die immediately. Some of them they put in old canoes that were extremely leaky and they push it out into sea, tied their hands and feet, and they would scuttle them. They would put holes in them with a spear or with clubs, and those would go down in the depths of the sea. The next bravest one's up. It seems like he was doing it in order of from the least bravest to the most. The next one's up. He put into old leaky canoes and didn't break them at all. Just let that leaky canoe sink down slowly until they sunk all the way down and died. But the most heroic ones, he thought, the most tenacious ones, right? The most persistent, the courageous, the bravest, the fearless ones that didn't fear Finau, it seemed like he gave them the worst. The ones who had the guts, the heart. These chiefs Finau took to Lofanga and tied them down to tree trunks in the sun, stripped them naked and tied them down, either stakes in the ground or bottom of the trees or tree trunks themselves. And he let them sit there and starve them to death. They die of hunger and thirst and weather and
Pretty
raging
rough.
heat of the sun. And
Mm,
eventually they all died. But it gives you a little bit more of an idea of what type of man Finau Ulukalala was, where he, instead of just killing everybody, he made sure that he took their heart first. He wanted their bravery. He wanted them not to be heroic. He wanted them not to die as vigilant warriors with valor. They described to Mariner that, yeah, a lot of them took it like warriors take it. They just sat there and they were patient and lasted out all the days until they died. They made no complaints, no cries, no nothing. And they had a big celebration in Ha'ano where he was pronounced king and he was known now as the king of Hawaii.
So after the
So really interesting. Any thoughts
mm.
on that? Let's go through this. Looks like Nacho has a comment here. tika upito animation of our ancestors just need to be a little darker. Oh yeah, we need to be a dark chocolate, not a milk chocolate. Is that what we're saying, Nacho? Maria.
Mario Nacho.
Kind of interesting how some of these guys, they take their punishment. Some of them not even really, complaining or beg. It's like they accepted it. I mean, it's
Mm,
kind of somewhat similar to a samurai kind of
mm,
situation.
mm,
Besides, some
mm.
of them kill themselves, but kind of interesting to see the personalities of the people there.
Yeah, and it just goes back, that third way of dying, I guess, for the most heroic kind of or staunch loyalists.
Opposition,
Yeah,
yeah.
yes, loyalists, and you know how making them starve and you strap them to a tree and kind of the sun and the weather. I'm just thinking, man, sometimes in Tonga, I'm just thinking, I just had flashback of like when Dad would take us to the farm and those days when it was super sunny. I'm like, why are we out here sometimes doing the? I was like, man, because it can be scorching hot. It's like, man, very unpleasant. Just imagine doing that when you're for days and no food, no water, too. That can be a horrible death, man. But I don't know. I just had flashbacks to that, to that, to those days when when Lolo was explaining the third one from the book on how those guys would die. But yeah, it's interesting.
No, and that's the thing is what's also interesting, like you're saying, is these guys when this happens, it's not very clear how long Finau stayed on Tongatapu, but the news spread very
Yes.
quickly,
Mm,
right? I mean, I'm wondering if that's just how often people were moving around
yeah.
um on between the islands, because that's you get news sometimes. That kind of news, even in our days, takes a while to go around, and
Hmm.
back then with just boats, it seems like it traveled very quickly. And then not only did the news travel very quickly, but then they organized people, and they were battles all along the way back. I wonder if they were battling because out of loyalty to Tuguaho, or if they knew that Ulkalala was going to come back and try and take over everything. I don't
Hmm.
know. It just kind of seems, I don't know.
Yeah.
Wonder
No,
what
I think it could be just go along your lines to it. There's a possibility maybe certain chiefs just thought, okay, there's chaos now. It's kind of like this is a
free
opportunity,
for all for
free
everybody. Yeah.
opportunity to kind of maybe gain more power or influence wherever they may be from what they already had, just to grow political
Mm.
power. That's what I'm thinking.
Well,
And maybe maybe
yeah,
some of
that's a
them were
good
not
point.
really, maybe some of them were not really loyalists to Urukalala, and then some left earlier from the battles to come tell other certain chiefs in Ha'apai Island. Seems like, Ha'ano or something. I don't know. I'm just thinking. I'm just thinking it could be the reason the word spread quickly because there's maybe guys in certain camps that were not like 100%. They probably left early than going with everybody.
You know
News
what?
already reached to the other islands, and they,
That's
them and
that's
certain
actually a
followers.
very, very
Yeah.
interesting point, because they had two battles on Tongatapu, right? The first
Mm,
one where it looked like they took some pretty big casualties.
mm,
Then they go back to Hahake. Then the Tui Halafatai guys show up.
mhm.
Maybe some of the people were thinking, dude, Ulkalala is severely weakened. So when
Mm,
he comes back to Ha'apai, if there's a time to challenge him,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
now because he's weakened. But they didn't realize those guys that came from
reinforcements. Yeah,
Fiji were
yeah,
legit,
yeah, yeah.
you know.
Mm.
Oh yeah, with George. Welcome, welcome, George. Alway Ha'apai, but just so you know, Fina Ulkalala has his roots in Maufang. Always stirring the pot. Always stirring the pot there, George. First Maufanga Vikings, baby. Is that the rugby team in Maufanga is called the Vikings?
I have no idea.
Ah, interesting, Maria
Mm.
George.
Yeah, because isn't there a part that Ulkalala goes and visits his father often when he goes to
Yes.
Tongatapu in Maupanga? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it seems like there's that connection there.
Yeah,
Okay.
his father, I think, is buried in Maufanga. So
Correct.
TN4. Let's get back into the story.
Hano thing and they finally conquer Hano. They celebrate over there, and after the celebration, and those who were with them and those who were against them were put to death and whatever, and those who were with them and the families that were on their side all celebrated together, and then they head for Vava'u. When they get to Vava'u, they have opposition too. There are a lot of Tuku'aho loyalists in Vava'u. The Vava'u people hear about the assassination of Tuku'aho from some of the Hapai guys that sailed over there. He said they actually had guys sail over there and take him the news. But after Finau and Tuponiua went to Vava'u and took over, right, they had the little battles and won the battles and the wars or whatever with their guys. They gathered the chiefs that were against Finau and Tuponiua. They gathered some of the Matapules, they gathered them together and they held them as prisoners. But even then, they were no longer, Finau was no longer resisted through war and battle after that. But he did say that they started harassing him either at night in the dark. They would yell out things to insult him, insult his leadership, insult his person, his look, and they started insulting him, his family in the dark. Or, you know, during the daytime, if it was far away, they would just yell out insults to him, to Finau, which means the Vava'u guys weren't scared of him. The Vava'u people. That's what they were doing. They were insulting him from hidden places or in the dark. So he felt that it was still dangerous to him, if that's how they were feeling about it. So Finau gets mad and he takes the prisoners that they got in Vava'u, told them,
How Tongan is that, or Polynesian is that, right? You know, just that's the way of rebellion. Lau'i, you know, you just,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah,
taunt them, which is another interesting thing. You know, there's this new like wave of like the chee-hoo, you know, like
yeah.
this whole thing. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but typically that, I don't know what your recollection is, Mussy, but that's kind of where I grew up, that's kind of a disrespectful kind of thing, especially if it's not your town.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff. It's a
Yeah.
way of being disrespectful to be so loud
Yes. Yeah.
and be overbearing. But
Mm.
that, you know, obviously here in the US, it's more like
It's a
something that's
thing.
celebrated, you know.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting to see how the different cultures changing, because you know what Ulkalala is experiencing there is people being loud, right,
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
intrusive, and
Yeah.
that was kind of a negative thing looked on. But you know, times change. But any thoughts on that?
No, I agree with you. My understanding was you're not really being loud, and it's the reason. I don't know, but there's been many times, when I've gone with dad just driving around, and then you especially go to places that you don't really know anything. You turn down the music, not the normal.
Yeah,
There's
don't
certain
be
things. Yes,
loud.
you don't be loud, in certain things. Unless it's a celebration of like an event or something. But like, it's not a thing to do to kind of be loud or be blasting music in certain times of the day or places that you're not
You're not
familiar with.
from. Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
yes.
Oh yeah, we. Says a couple comments here. They probably was yelling out Ulkalala, Ulupoko.
No, and that's what I'm thinking, and that's probably a Tongan etiquette because obviously, yeah, that must be a thing. Like just to, I know, yeah, but no one's really respecting anyone's boundaries or anything, so you can do
Whatever
whatever
you
you
want.
want. So, whakamatariri.
Oh yeah, uya kakai Ulkalala. Oh, that's the thing, right? That's everybody being really, because with the chaos, right? Because what is Ulkalala going to say? Oh, we
Mm,
have to respect the order. You have to,
mm,
when he just assassinated the
mm,
leader, so it's hard to
mm.
pull like structure and order when you're the one, you know,
Creating it.
creating the chaos in a sense, even
Yeah,
though
yeah.
it's quote unquote for a guy who's being overly oppressive. But the funny thing is when you as we go along this story, it's Ulkalala's brother who seems to be the idealist, right? He's the
Mm,
one that tells Ulkalala, I can't handle this guy, you know, like cutting all
mm,
of his chef's hands off just to mark him, and this guy's oppressive.
mm.
It's Ulkalala's brother who's much more thoughtful of what's oppressive and what's whatever. Ulkalala just seems to be an opportunist.
Yeah, yeah,
His
yeah.
brother is leading the way. He's like, oh, I'll come with you. But it didn't quite seem like Ulkalala was like spirit. I wouldn't say spiritual, but like the real believer. The people weren't really following Ulkalala because they believed in a cause or anything, right?
Mm,
Tupo Niwa, his brother, seemed to be the one that people were motivated to follow. Like he was someone that inspired them, and Ulkalala didn't quite have that from kind of what we're hearing.
mm.
Um, yeah, just kind of wanted to say that, and I think that's one of the reasons why later on in the story, Finau just sits there while they assassinate his brother, right? I mean,
Yep.
because that was a straight up political move, and I think it was because he understood when you're seeking power, with power is your primary goal, there can only be one, like the Highlander mentality, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Tuponiwa, his brother, it doesn't seem like he was really seeking to be
Yeah.
the pinnacle. He was just like, no, man, this is oppressive on the people. Um, I don't know. Very interesting.
Yeah. Oppressive on the people, and I have the ability to do something about it with that if I have your support and your backing, we can do it, kind of thing. Yes.
Exactly.
Because I
Yeah.
don't, because right, he wasn't, he didn't want to do it alone. It was more of like once Ulkalala agreed, they kind of went together and kind of
Well,
did the
well, it sounded like Tuponiwa was going to do it on his own. He said, whether you're going to help me or
Oh,
not, I'm going to
okay,
go do
okay,
it.
okay,
Right. That's the way.
okay.
And then Ulkalala just kind of, yeah, I'll come
Just
along.
go
Yeah,
along. Okay, and that's where the opportunity kind of presents itself for Ulkalala. Yeah,
exactly. And then from the story on the previous one,
yeah.
um, Ulkalala says he's not like leading in he is swinging and fighting, but he's not like fully committed everything into it. He's a little bit more measured. Like
Mm,
he's very calculated, right?
yeah.
Where Tupo Niwa is much more of an emotional leader and
Mm,
an inspiring leader.
mm.
And Ulkalala is more like, no, we make calculated risks,
Yeah,
decisions.
this is a puzzle for my bigger picture in the future.
Exactly. And he's trying to
Yeah.
position himself for that power in the future that he has in mind.
Mm,
So 10-4.
To bring the prisoners to him, these chiefs and these matapules, he's going to make an example out of them. Finau is about to make an example out of these chiefs and these warriors just to put more fear in the people so that they don't treat them, they don't disrespect him. The head chief, the main chief of Ava'u, his name was Vuna. Finau finds out that Vuna bounced. He leaves with some of his men and his chiefs, and they run away to Samoa. Finau Rukalala and Tuponiwa separate into two different groups, and they have to go around Vava'u to find out if there's any Tu'aha loyalists and start battling with them and killing them, and then they end up conquering them and bringing the Mata'apules, the chiefs, some of the ones that are still loyal to Tu'aho, and make them become prisoner. That's when they find.
Interesting that they go to Ha'amoa.
mm. Vuna, yeah,
Why do
and
you think
Vuna
that?
probably there's either their wives or close connections to Ha'amoa because seems like Ha'amoa was a lot easier to sell if you're from Wava'u kind of thing. So
A
strong,
lot
probably strong
closer.
ties, strong ties and proximity, and yeah, that's what I'm assuming.
Mm.
What's your
No, and
thoughts?
that's the thing. It's close. It's right there. I'm wondering if it has anything to do with the Tuikan Kupolo maybe bringing in people from Ha'amoa because of like he did in Hihifo. So he
Mm,
brings in a lot of people into Hihifo, and that's how he kind of establishes order. I wonder if they were bringing in other chiefs and stuff and installing in other parts of
mm,
Vava'u and Ha'apai, because we gotta we you know we've mentioned this many times.
mm,
A lot of our people today kind of view Polynesia as these independent countries, right?
yeah.
It's no different. If we look at the islands as villages rather than nations, when the reason why I say that because it makes sense. We've seen this behavior, whether it's sports in a new head coach coming in or a business, a new CEO coming in. You bring people that you trust and that you're familiar with and put them in positions of power.
Mm,
And I wouldn't be surprised if something similar like that has happened throughout not just Tongatapu and Ha'apai and Vava'u, but maybe throughout the areas of influence. And maybe that's why they go to Ha'amoa, is because they've only been, that's where a lot of their main ties are. They know if they go to Tongatapu, maybe there's still too much chaos going on in Tongatapu,
mm,
and they say,
mm,
hey, let's just go back to our family back
in Hamua.
in Ha'amoa.
No, and now I'm just to add along because I would suspect that because the Tuikan Polu is a reference to Upolu Island, that those followers of the Tuikan Polu at that time went to Ha'amoa because I would assume most of the time the people from Upolu would support whoever's the title of the Tuikan Polu. And
Mm.
there, I don't think Ulukalala would want to go and chase them to Ha'amoa because there's probably a good following of more supporters there. So it's more makes, and that's why it makes sense for Wuna probably to go there because if he's a follower of the Tuikan Polu, that's where a big majority of the people that went to go and support when the Tuikan Polu kind of started in Tongatapu in Hihifo. So probably that strong relationship was still there. So I don't know. That's what I'm thinking.
No, and that's a very interesting point, because we look back at, you know, Kaulfo Nuofekai, when those people assassinate his father, he chases them across the entire
Mm,
Polynesian nation, right? All the way to
mm,
Wallace and Futuna is chasing them
mm,
there. So
mhm.
that is to show that the Tuitonga's power was pretty all encompassing, where they went,
Yes.
far and wide. This goes to show that, there is that fracture of power, and there seems to be a lot more power that's being shared with the Tuikan Kupolu and Ha'amoa, because Ulkalala,
Yeah.
if Ulkalala really was as influential or powerful as he wanted to be, he would have gone to Ha'amoa. He had
Yeah.
no problem going to Tongatapu and fighting there. He had no problem
Vavao.
going to Vava'u and fighting there, and in Ha'apai.
Mm,
But obviously, at some point, he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to have zero support
yeah.
in Ha'amoa, so I'm just going to stay here." Which
Yeah.
is probably
Yeah.
the smart thing to do, because, like you said, that's the Tuikanukupolu's. Everybody over there is going to get behind the Tuikanukupolu because of the family ties over
Yes.
there.
Right. And you're talking about thousands of people back in those days. That's a lot of people that
Yeah,
went over and most likely stayed to kind of serve and establish the Tui Kangpolo in its kind of early stages with Ngata in that time.
yeah.
So that
Okay.
makes sense. And yeah, you do a good job too, and just clarifying on the influence and what the Tuitonga did when that happened. When Tagalawa got assassinated, Kaufo Nua went to Foduna and Wellis Island and went there and killed the assassin, the guys who assassinated his father. But not only that, then he starts right. Then he actually creates a residence in Savai
Yeah.
with the Puri Malay, stays there, and then what? The next 4 or 5 Tuitonga's title holders
Stay in
end up
Samoa.
staying there before they kind of return back to Tonga. So see the different influence and political power when you, compared to the two kind of the Urukalala and the Tuikang Polo kind of stuff. But yeah, it's just interesting. I just thought I would just share that.
Yeah. No, 100%. Let's go back to Kava University here.
Find out Vuna ran away to Hotmall with a lot of his chiefs. I imagine it's the same thing. I imagine they did the same thing to those prisoners. The ones who they wanted to kill immediately, they hit over the head or hit them with a spear, killed them immediately. Same thing with the ones who were probably sunk in canoes or sunk in leaky boats or leaky canoes, and perhaps some even tied down and left to starve in the sun and die in thirst of thirst and hunger. Just to make an example of them so that he is more respected by the people of Ava'u. He is then acknowledged as the king of Ava'u. Now he's both the king of Hapai and Vava'u. And he did that through military force. He has nothing to do with Tongatapu. Those guys aren't going to take it. Those guys have their own kings and they have their own champions and their own house, and they're divided on their own. But
Do
Finau
I got a quick
Kalala was
question?
only
Yeah.
Out of the three options to die, what Urukalala did to his prisoners, which one would you choose? Just out of curiosity, would you choose to get smacked in the head and bashed to death, or go in a old boat and then probably drown, or strapped to a coconut tree and or to a tree to or starve and kind of
I don't know,
die that way.
man. It would depend on how much I hated Ulgalala,
I
right?
got one. I got my option.
Okay. Well,
I,
what would be your option?
the third option, because I would try to last out, be stuck to the tree and starve to death and let the sun burn me, and hopefully everybody's like I would now see this way
Fuck off.
no how ko kainga o whakahauwhi and have that
Always
hope,
have
eh?
that hope.
Lotu
Yeah.
Lotu be just last it on. If it doesn't come, just comes like, oh, hopefully somebody of my kainga and or kolo or come and save me.
Yeah.
Hey, but if not, but I'm just thinking, man, if I was in those days, I'm just gonna pinne be. So, withstand, and hopefully if you make it and then you get saved, but if
Me
not,
me
then mate I be.
well, that's the thing. I think I would have taken the Tui Halafatai route, right?
Yeah,
Because remember they're fighting, right?
yeah,
And maybe I was like, man, if we're gonna lose, I might as well lose like fighting, like having trying to kill someone. I don't know if I would surrender, especially considering everybody knows Ulkalala's kind of behavior. Maybe I don't know,
I'm
but
just saying, if you get
if
caught
I got
alive,
caught,
you've got
if I got
caught
caught
alive,
alive,
like, ew.
I would I would probably try and find a reason to try and kill someone and get killed first.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I would
So you
say,
most
hey,
likely get bashed in the head,
yeah,
like, yeah, okay,
I would engage to make that happen. I was like, hey, you're either gonna kill me or I'm gonna kill you,
okay,
right?
uh,
I don't know. To me, if it's like worth sticking around much longer,
okay.
unless I knew like, oh, my Kainga is building a big army, they might come. But when I see Vuna get on the boat and go to Hamo, I'm like, oh yeah,
No, just you went to go pick up some new and stuff because maybe it's a little bit sweeter in Ubolu or Sawai, and then you'll come back, or maybe some better bananas or something. Who knows?
well, I'm just thinking, Masi, and this I don't know, it's just an idea that came by, and I don't know why it popped up, but maybe maybe that is one of the reasons why, because it doesn't make sense to me that Ulkalala was able to do what he did. And it
Mm,
doesn't make sense to me. It's not like he has thousands of warriors,
yeah, yeah.
right?
Mm,
Um, and how is it that he is able to go to Vava'u? Vava'u is a higher population than Ha'apai,
yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
The question is, obviously there's loyalists to Oahu, and I'm wondering, and I'm starting to feel that they were the minority,
Mm,
in
mm,
my opinion. And I'm wondering if it has to do with importing chiefs from Ha'amoa,
mm,
and that there were, I don't know. That's the only thing I think of. But obviously, it doesn't seem like the majority of the population
yeah.
was in favor of Tuaho. Maybe it's because of how brutal he was. Maybe Tupo
Mm,
Niwa was really representing the majority of the people that were just kind of getting sick. But it doesn't make sense to me
mm. Good point.
how Ulkalala was able to do this. If you just look at, oh, he just had a band of guys and he was just going around beating people. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. There has to be more going on in the politics
Mm,
and something to explain how and why he was able to do that, because yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me.
okay.
I don't know if the country is just so fractured, the power is so
Yeah.
fractured at that point, or whatever. But it's for how quickly he's able to do this. I think the political environment was that Tuikan Kupolu was already losing a ton of power at that
Mm,
point, or something. But I don't know. It doesn't just seem very logical to me that he was able to do this so quickly. I
mm,
wonder if there's anything more that was going on.
yeah. Yeah. No, good points. Those are fair points. to ask. And maybe Mariner wasn't able to see that or understand it because he was such a young kid. Maybe he wasn't able to kind of capture that, but definitely does it definitely takes maybe there was a lot of thing that was going on to kind of explain, Ulukalala with the amount of warfare he actually was involved because you would think he didn't have such a big following, but yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
interesting. Interesting.
yeah. Because I don't know. I maybe it would have been nice to have Danny to explain some of this. Oh yeah, where the chaplain is reminding us guys to go to church tomorrow. So
Yeah, your side of the world. Yeah,
yeah,
Oshmautol Brown Monk. We're all good
so
here on this
thank
side
you
of
for
the
the
world.
reminder, Brown Monk. All right, let's get back into it.
over Vava'u and Hapai at this point in time. He's acknowledged as king. Tuponiua is now acknowledged as a tributary chief, which was what Vuna was for Tukuaho. Mariner even talked to Tuponiua and found out that Vuna was so close to Tuaho that sometimes he didn't even take any tributes to Tuaho. Sometimes he didn't
See,
collect anything for
Mm,
Tuaho. He just left it because Vava'u was so far from Tongatapu. But still, put it upon Tuponiua and Finau and other chiefs to bring tribute to Tuaho, where Vuna was so close, perhaps even related to him, maybe even on the female side of the family, that he really didn't
Kawahamoa.
take much to
Eh?
him.
mm,
But because he
mm.
was related and so close, he let him be the tributary chief for the main chief in Vava'u. Vuna's gone now, and now it's Tuponiua that's in Vava'u. Hapai is under the rule of Finau Ulukalala, as now he is the king of both.
See, that's why it
Mm,
makes me think maybe just one or two generations of Una there or something or Kauha'amoa that were brought in
mm,
to buy the Tuikanukupolu because of family. You know what I mean? So
mhm,
really, they would be seen as a foreigner in
mm,
Vava'u, which is
mm,
would make sense why
mm.
he would be so willing to leave Vava'u so quickly and go to
Yeah,
Ha'amoa, and
yeah.
why the people wouldn't be resisting Ulkalala that much because they're kind of seeing him as well. He's much closer to
Baby has a
Tonga
claim
than
to
they
the
get.
yes to
Exactly.
Vava'u than the other one. No, that makes sense. That idea can definitely make sense. And because I do kind of think why did Vuna didn't put at least a fight to just to figure out because
Exactly.
you would understand that my man already fought two battles in Tongatapu. He's already fought another one in Hapai, right? Just the
He's weakened.
yeah,
Yeah.
you would yeah, but like and you're like, come on. Sometimes because sometimes you're gonna find out if the people somebody has the political will to still drive it, but not to put up at least like a fight to just try to measure and then you retreat, but to go when you find out they're coming and you go is like, yeah, then
Exactly.
your idea makes sense as like, oh, we'll just go back to Boro or something. But yeah, that I mean when you explain that, I can see that makes sense.
Yeah, because I mean, when you hear that news, and let's say, like, Vavao people, how likely do you think Vavao people would have been like, yeah, let's let a Hapai guy or someone else just come take up? No, that, like you said, maybe they felt he had a claim and they
Mm,
didn't like Vuna because they viewed him more as a foreigner. And
mm,
I'm wondering if the guys in Ha'apai that were resisting him were kind of similar to Vuna, right?
mm,
Guys that were kind of installed there
mm.
to provide, some oversight for the Tui Kanukupolu in those areas.
Yeah, yeah.
Both Vava'u and Hapai at this point in time. The thing with Tongatapu at this point in time is the fact that because Tukuaha didn't have somebody to succeed him, to take over his place, he didn't have any sons of the age to take over or brothers or perhaps anybody on the male side of the family. That's why it was all divided. Everybody started dividing themselves and building their own forts in different sections in different parts of the island. And because of the case, they would often go to war with each other, which would keep them inside of the fort. And if they're in there during war, all 12 or 13 of these forts, there's not many of them going out and planting food just in
Mm,
case they get caught outside of their fort, which then caused famine among the people because nobody could go out and grow anything. And then a lot of them thought, well, we hated the Wa'aho, but at least we're able to know that even though he's in power, we can still go out and grow food. I guess anybody can decide how they would have wanted to live. So
That's a very, this is why war is just so dangerous, right? It should
Yeah,
always be a last resort,
yeah, yeah.
right?
And, I just
Yeah.
yeah. No, no, do it. And that's why when you say it should be the last resort, I just had a flashback of just understanding even the stuff that happened with Saddam Hussein when he was thinking. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, he was a ruthless leader and stuff, but things are a lot worse in the Middle East since he's been gone than it is now. So he created some stability, like kind of like what Lola was saying. There was some stability that people can, most of the people can still kind of live their lives and stuff on the majority of part. At the same time, he was actually providing stability at that area, and once he removed, it was kind of chaos from even up to now. If you look at the
Yeah.
Middle East now, that region, how many like the ISIS groups and some of the terrorist groups and Hezbollah and stuff, they're kind of gotten more stronger, and a lot of the terrorist organizations are actually running these little like
Flourishing now
city
compared
states.
to, yeah.
Yes. So it's very interesting. That's where my mind went to when Lolo was explaining, Gaba University was explaining the scenario, like when the people were like, even though Duao was in charge and stuff, we can still kind of fend for ourselves, and there was stability. But now there's kind of a little bit chaos. Like people can't really cultivate their land and stuff. So that's what I was just wanted to share on that. But I just thought that was interesting.
No, and it is. I mean, this is kind of the beauty of, or in theory, when you execute democracy and a
Yeah.
justice system, a legal system, it is a way to settle disputes or effect change without having to go to war,
Mm,
right? That's usually the, like when we use the customer situation, a unhappy customer that's talking to you is better than a customer who's not talking to you.
mm,
Because when a customer doesn't talk to you, there's no chance to fix what's going on. But
good
even
point.
if the
Yeah.
customer is unhappy, this is the same thing with political systems. When
Yeah.
people feel that they don't have a way to effect change without going to physical conflict,
Mm,
right? Then it goes to physical conflict. This is the danger of those people who want to go to violence so quickly.
mm,
They think they're going to effect change and then everything's going to be like it was before. Once you go into violence, everything falls apart,
mm.
right? Everything that you took for granted, any type of structure, any type of order, it goes out the window. And that's what these guys are experiencing, right? With the
Yeah.
assassination, any type of order, even the simple thing of growing food goes out the window. So be
Yeah.
careful, be careful. Like,
Yeah.
this is the same kind of thing we talked about in Tonga when they burned down the
The
capital.
riot.
Yeah.
Correct.
Oh,
What,
we need
2006?
change.
Yeah. To the
Yeah.
2006. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna go make change. Go, and no violence burned down. Now it's hundreds of millions of dollars in debt. Now multiple generations of Tongans are gonna be in debt. Who's gonna pay for that? Well,
Yeah.
just like here in America with wars and funding things overseas, it's the next few generations that pay that price.
Yeah.
So, out of a short-sighted desire for change, you can make decisions and actions that lead to another type of burden or enslavement for your next generations
Mm.
for who knows how long. So
Yeah.
there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to
Lot to
learn
learn.
from this
Yeah.
little observation as we watch what
For,
happened
for
um,
sure.
in Tonga at this time.
since Mariner got there in the past 7 or 8 years, and since the death of Tuaho, Finau has made it an annual thing to attack Tonga. He would attack one or two or even more of those forts that were in Tonga from Hapai and Vava'u annually. When Captain Cook showed up to Tonga, everything was under Tukuaho. That was 77. So between 77 and 99, Tonga is now divided based on this battle or this war that the Poniua and Finau started, killing Tu'uaho. Now it's time for the annual attack on Tonga. Mariner and his Palangi friends, those four Palangis that I mentioned earlier, his four friends start preparing the little carronades, the smaller cannons. Because remember, the big ones were just too heavy to move. So after they unloaded those, they didn't take them anywhere because they were too big. But the smaller ones, they built wheels and they built something to mount it on so that they can push it. Finau is getting ready to attack Tonga now. Now it's been years since Tu'uaho died. It's been years since Tuihafatai and his Fiji mercenaries came back. It's been years, and since then, they estimate about since 1799 all the way up to now, to where Mariner's there, the past 7 or 8 years, Finau has been attacking these forts in Tonga without any success. They've just been fortified too well, and the men have been too brave, and the fights have been too good, or at least even in battle, for them not to fall under the rule of Finau Ukalala. After they create these carriages for the carriage.
And once again, oh, before I get into the comment, hey, welcome, Clyde Moore. Welcome,
Hey,
welcome.
more. Oh, Dr. Malo.
Malo. This is what I'm saying. So he's coming annually to attack these forts. And remember, this is not a unified Tonga Tapu. These are like little villages.
Yeah, city states kind of
City
thing.
states, right? And he's not able to be successful against them.
Yeah.
And yet he was able to unify Hapai and Vava'u so
Hapai and
quickly.
Vava'u.
So this is why I'm saying there has to be some, like, the more I listen to this,
Yeah.
the more I'm convinced the political state in Hapai and Vava'u is they're viewing whoever is overseeing them as outsiders, because there's not a unified, like, hey, Ulkalala is coming from Hapai, Vava'u's gotta stand up. It's more like, well, maybe they're encouraging Ulkalala because they're like, Vuna needs to go back to Ha'amoa. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
Vava'u people are not uniting behind that, because now we're looking at, he comes to these little city states on Tonga Tapu and he's not being successful over 7-8 years.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
You know,
And what? And I'm assuming he's more like that Nuku'alofa Hihifo side. He's kind of attacking kind of most of the time,
correct.
right?
Well, and that's the thing, because that's where Tuguaho is. I mean, he was. It seems like when he goes to Hahake, he's very comfortable in Hahake, because every time after they have the battle, he goes to Hahake, and that's where he regroups.
Yeah. Reorganize and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems like mostly, the Hihifo side, where the Tuikan Kupolu is prominent, is the area he's probably spending most of his time, which would be that Nuku'alofa and going west.
Yeah.
For these little mini cannons, Finau goes up and he looks at it and he's like, these things aren't made for quick attacks. Like, you're pushing it looks heavy, but the way we fight in our battles, in our wars, we attack fast. You got to be quick with the spear or quick with the club, and it's in and out. Mariner assures him that no, we'll go set these things up in the front. And they had 4 of them. We'll go set these things up in the front, and as long as you guys can give support and protect the guns will do all the work. And Finau is questioning, like, I don't know, man. It just seems like it's too much trouble and it's too heavy. And Mariner assures him, all right, me and my friends, we will man these guns, right? Because he assures them that they've done it before, right? These were on the ship. They've manned these guns before. They know how to use it. They know how well they work. They know how efficient it is. And they can run into a successful battle if they use these mini cannons, these bigger guns. Finally, they convince and they talk Finau into it. Finau's like, all right, we'll give you support. You guys put the cannons up front, and then we'll go from there. He also makes Mariner enter into an oath, like, promise me you'll do your job. Promise me that these things will be successful, that you guys aren't going to run, that you guys are going to stay loyal and stay faithful to the cause. And Mariner assures him, yeah, of course, we're going to be loyal to the cause. It was upon that Finau then gave Mariner to one of his wives as a son. So she was gonna take care of him, teach him everything he needs to know about the culture, about the politics, about the position of Finau, and now the position of Mariner. Everything he needs to know about the customs and the traditions, anything he needs, whether it's clothes or food or whatever he needs to know. She even teaches him how to speak and pronounce words even better, because it's only right that a prince of the king knows and is more eloquent with words and pronounces them well. And Mariner learns a lot of this from Finau's wife, whose name is Mafihape. And he says that Mafihape is of great consequence. She's very valued, not only to Finau and his family, but to society in Hapai, to society as a mother figure, not only just in politics, but in cultural things. She was very valuable to the people in comforting and teaching and example and everything, which means Finau gave Mariner his best because Mariner promised that he will be loyal and give Finau his best or their best, him and his friends, with the guns that they're about to use. They're about to go attack Nuku'alofa. So they're preparing for war.
See, that's the kind of influence that you have, that these little, it sounds to me now that we're listening to this,
Hmm.
um, those little resistance that were when they came back to Hapai were little small pockets,
Mm.
right? It wasn't really, because it seems like the majority of the people are behind Ulkalala, which seems to be the same in Vava'u.
Mm.
And you know, that's what he's explaining about, was it Muffy?
Yeah, Mafi
Muffy
happy.
Hape? That's what you would expect when you feel like, oh, she's one of us, or she has a right to the position that she's in and she's valued. When the people feel that that person is justified, and they, you know, by inheritance and in the blood that they have, people are much more loyal. And then if they treat you well, man, that just takes it to the next level. Whoever Vuna was and wherever he came from, the people didn't have that, right?
Mm. Mm.
Vuna was
Mm.
like, hey, I'm ready to go back to Hamoa. And so
Mm.
interesting. Looks like
Yeah.
Noah. Hey, welcome, Noah. Looks like Noah is joining us. Oh, let me add a note here. Noah here. We're not on that topic today, Noah, but
Conquer the islands in this.
welcome to the show,
Oh,
Noah.
I don't know.
Any thoughts on that, Mussy? But this is like, yeah, you know what? This is what you would expect from someone who has the right, from, you know, comes from the right family,
Ye-
and seems like the people are behind and value the that individual.
No, I agree. I agree with your conclusion there. With our our speculation, just trying to understand and what we hear and what we think could have happened with Vuna, and it could explain why he was so
So quick to
eager to,
leave.
yes,
Yeah.
so quickly to leave, even just without a somewhat of a scuffle, just to measure. But yeah, no, I agree with your conclusion on that. That's definitely a possibility.
And one of the Hawaiians have musket. You know, the Hawaiians all have muskets. There was 8 of them, right? And a couple of them were using it on the beach, shooting it into the water and shooting at things and whatnot. And Finau takes a musket and tells Mariner to shoot an old lady. And this lady didn't have any value to society. She was senile, and she became.
Dude, this is like Ulkalala's favorite thing to ask Mariner to do, huh? Just to shoot random people. First, it was
How is he?
the
How
chef.
is how is Ulukalala not as bad as Tuguajo? At least Tuguajo kept his guys alive. Kept his cooks alive, but they had missing limbs. My manager said, "Just shoot this one." Shoot. What's the other one earlier
It
when the
was
other guy was
the
climbing
chef.
up?
It was
The
a
chef.
cook. It was the cook that was climbing and taking metal off the boat. That's
Uh,
a that's a fair point. Mas like, at what point is like, "Tagu patao pa Ulkalala yan mo."
yeah.
Wow.
No, and it could, and maybe, and it explains why Ulukalala was strong in Hapai and Babao. It went beyond just his political influence. It cut some family relationships with those two islands, and probably that's who he was able to manage. But I was like, man, because Ulukalala, he sounds pretty ruthless. It's the second time he just wants somebody to shoot a random person. Yes, they could be a little, we all have some those people in the towns and villages of Masori, just not always there. But then it looks like it looks like Ulkalala, when he sees some people with machete, he's like, just get him and shoot him, you know? It's like, shit. No mercy. No mercy.
That's a good point. At the amount, and these are the only two recorded instances where he just wants to kill random people. It's like, at what point is Urkalala the same as to wow? That's a good point, Mashi. I didn't think about that. This is the two party system. Doesn't matter which party is in power; it's
Yeah,
the same
yeah.
outcome.
It's the same outcome, man. It's
Came
funny.
that way because when men or when chiefs get sick and they're about to die, they put a human sacrifice. And it's typically that chief's child, their life. They sacrifice that child to save the chief, to save that man's life. And so this lady who used to be married to a chief who died, they're saying that the grief that was brought upon them sacrificing the child, which was an infant, anywhere between 1 and 3 years old. They
Mm.
had two guys wrap something around the baby's neck or the kid's neck, and the mother had to watch and grieving in grief, watch them choke the kid to death. And once the kid died, they put him down, expecting that the father was going to live, or the chief was going to live, which often wasn't the case. It was because of that and other reasons why.
Thank goodness for Christianity to get us over some of those the
Yeah.
return. Thank
Mm,
goodness for Hikuleo and Jehovah returning the
yeah.
original religion to get us past some of this
Eh, eh,
barbaric stuff. Hey, Slick Rick,
yeah.
Malo,
Hello.
welcome.
Hello, Slick Rick.
But that man, that's pretty brutal, man. Can you imagine
Yeah.
that? Like,
I could when you talking to, especially when you're always in a constant of warfare, and then you lose, you lose, because there's a certain thing of society that you lose when you're always kind of in warfare. You're really trying to find a quick fix, and people, that time with their lotu was, fail, some sacrifice, human sacrifice. I'm not surprised, because it does seem like this, what, in the late 1700s to the lot of the 1800s, Tonga was always in a constant civil war. It seems
mhm.
like so. I'm not surprised that things like that were happening, especially when society is in always in chaos. You know, I don't know. That's just my thoughts there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think we forget how quickly you can go from
Yeah.
order and civilization to just the chaos and
Uh,
brutality. You
mm,
know, we take for granted that things are as organized and as established as they are now, but it can go away very quickly.
yeah.
Grief struck her so hard that she lost her mind because she used to be a woman of value in her younger years when she was married to the chief or another man, another warrior, whatever he was. They actually believed in human sacrifice, that sacrificing the child would save the man's life, which didn't happen. They credit her senile behavior, her losing her mind, through the grief that she felt losing that child and other relations. Sometimes it wasn't just one child. Sometimes they would kill one and then the man would get better and then get bad again and then they'd have to take another one. Either way,
Jeez.
now this lady's older and she's crazy. The crazy
Is that why Tuwaho had no children? Every time he got a fever.
she, she, hey, hey, remember that maybe the two Polo were fine. This could be a baba or ha'apai thing. Nah, I don't know. Nah, I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? But no, it is interesting, and like you kind of mentioned earlier, man. Once you lose stability and civil, you know, being able to civilize your society, because peace allows, and that's the reason why Mua was, you know, never had a fort. It was very
Mhm.
there was a lot of the healers. I don't know if you did mention it. Tua Taufaha was actually sickly as a child.
Yes.
He
It
said
was
to
the
Mua.
Tonga's Taula that saved him.
Yes, and you only get people that are willing to come, and these are smart people or healers or people with some valuable skills. They're gonna go to places where it's stable,
Stable. Yeah.
right? Einstein left Germany because Germany was in chaos with the whole. seeking to eliminate the Jews and just causing World War II kind of thing, pretty much. Einstein came to America. What does he do? He's the reason why America was able to have the atomic bomb. So it's kind of the same kind of thing. When you're always in constant warfare, you
Yeah.
you tend to do some crazy things, and you don't have certain healers to kind of heal the certain chiefs and stuff. If they don't have any healers, so what they turn to human sacrifice to hopefully do something, because they don't have a person in the village to kind of heal the chief. So that's just my
Yeah.
input there on that.
Well, I think this is interesting. And the first time I heard this, I thought it was a little bit like on the fringes and kind of,
Mm,
yeah, we're not like that. But we tend to think that we are so different than our ancestors, right?
mm,
That, oh, we would never do that. We would never. But look at what we do with unborn children, right?
yeah.
And what that means is you're basically, just because they're not out running and walking and talking, we think, oh, we can quote
Mm,
unquote sacrifice that,
yeah.
right? And people don't have an issue with that. Another
Yeah.
thing is like, just look at the war in Ukraine,
Mm,
right? Oh, it's let's sacrifice all their young men and all their stuff.
yeah.
Like, look at the hundreds of thousands of people, and yet people are like, yeah, that's a good thing. And then
Yeah.
you have guys like in the federal government who, unfortunately, war is a machine that needs to be fed, and apparently it's not just money, it's humans
Yeah.
have to be
Innocent lives too.
sacrificed to
Yeah.
feed that machine. So we may think, oh, we're more sophisticated because we got science. We're still doing the same thing, just in a different mechanism of doing it. Just because we're further away from it,
Yeah.
we think, oh, we're not like that. No, we're just, it's like when this is a funny story, and then maybe it's unrelated to it, but when we were in Tonga, right? Um, we were killing animals all the time, right? And
Mm,
I'd never feel sorry. I never
yeah.
feel sorry for a pig
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
a whatever, right? I mean, it was like, oh yeah, we gotta kill it. Okay,
Yeah.
stab
Just
it, break
another
the
day.
neck. It's
Another
just
day in
another
Tonga.
simple task. You go overseas, and now that you're so separated from the processing of your food,
Yeah. Yeah.
you just go to the grocery store and you just buy your stuff, right? You don't
Yeah.
gotta kill it. So
Prepackaged. Yeah.
yes. So it's almost like you live in this false reality that death
Yeah.
is not happening, right? Because it looks so pretty on your end. It looks so clean and
Mm,
organized, but the reality is the death is happening.
mm,
That's how I feel like when we read these stories and we listen to this stuff, that sometimes we're like, "Oh man, they're so like backwards. They don't
barbaric. They're so barbaric.
barbaric." And yet it's just because it's happening right in front of them. We're living in the same scenario. We just are a little bit further away from it, but it's happening. Kids, just look at this. What's going on at the border?
Mm,
Everybody knows sex trafficking of young children are
yeah.
happening there. Now, what's
Yeah.
worse? What's worse is dying in this unfortunate manner,
Yeah.
or being treated how these children are being treated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which one's worse? I don't know, but n- everybody knows it's happening, but because we're so far away from it,
Yeah.
we pretend like it's not happening, but it's really happening. So I guess the reason why this is coming up is, as much as things have changed, it's still the same.
Mm,
Like, we listen to these stories, and it's, we feel like, oh man. And even I said it just earlier, malo mo Christianity. And it's true, but the reality is it's still happening, and it's happening on a very large scale. I don't know, just some thoughts that came to mind, Musty, as
yeah.
we're having the conversation.
No, I just remember, when you're talking about how we see, we view it as barbaric and stuff in those days, but in our days with the hundreds of kids who are dying in abortions, that people are actually willing to go and make it happen. And then when it's just that in our days, we like I would just say "Tao boto he kaagad," I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
like that's all it is. We're just better at I don't know how
Lying to
you think.
ourselves.
Yes, yeah. So
No, yeah,
we're just better at the kaka in today's society compared in those days. It's just you see what you get. Our days, what you see is not really what you get, but we're doing it the same thing.
yeah. No, and that's the thing. I mean, as like I was saying, as much as things have changed, yet so much is still the same.
Mm,
I don't
mm.
know. Kind of
No,
crazy.
that's my thoughts. Yeah.
No, I appreciate it.
Crazy old woman in the town. And Fina would tell him often that she would go and sometimes
Oh, that's Moana's grandma, the crazy lady in the
Okay.
village.
See, so the Disney didn't do a good job because in Ukalala would have killed her already. It's like we don't. When I see Masori behavior like that, I tell somebody if I'm not igita mate. So, but in Disney, it's like everyone is. It's okay to be Masori a little bit. And looks like Urukalala didn't play around with those
so,
people, man.
so what we do know now from this is Moana doesn't descend from Ulgalala,
No, no, maybe from Vuna or something.
from Vuna. Yeah, Moana descends from Vuna because if it was Ulgalala, like grandma might have been shot already.
Yeah. Hey,
Ay,
Ukalala,
ay,
man, he's pretty ruthless himself, man.
this guy, like, how many people say, hey, yeah, hey, Marin, Tokiukamea, shoot that person. Yeah.
be naked in public, which was indecent and disrespectful. Sometimes she would go into a mix, into a kaba ceremony, and she'd dance naked and sing naked. They considered that disrespectful. They considered that indecent exposure. Because of that, she found herself at the bottom levels of society, the lower classes of society, and now she is of no use and of no value to society. That's why if you now asked Mariner to kill her, to use the gun, we're testing out, we're preparing for war to go attack Nuwalofa. We're testing out these muskets. Take the musket and shoot her. Mariner had to explain to him and describe to him, it is against my religion. It's against our religion. It's against our laws of our country to take a life of an innocent person. That's considered murder. And he tries to describe that through Tui Tui and to Finau using the best Tongan that he could as he was instructed by Mafihape. So by now he's learning and he's not very fluent, but he's a little bit, at least enough for Finau to understand that, no, I'm not going to kill this lady. Finau accepts that those are the facts and that's the way it is, or that's the way his country, the laws of his country and his religion is, that's fine. So he accepts that. Finau then calls one of the Hawaiians who's playing with the musket to shoot her.
It's
The
always a
Hawaiian guy turns
Hawaiian.
with the musket, loads it and everything, and the lady went down to pick up a shell or something. And the Hawaiian guy lifted his musket and shot her. And she fell back into the water and died. That's the story of that crazy old lady. But it also gives us some more insight of how the culture was.
I don't know what it is about the Hawaiians, man, but they're pretty okay with, yeah, let's shoot anybody.
Yeah.
Maria Kamehameha.
Oh,
I don't know. That's hilarious.
As far as how they viewed the classifications of people. The higher your value, the more important that you were and that you actually have a soul. Where if you had low value and you could do the very minimum, that you had no soul and you were of no consequence to the people or to society itself. So judging upon how they viewed each other in society, it would be very helpful for a person to be ambitious, to try to move up somehow, some way, to try to be smarter, to try to use whatever they can to do better. And that's no different from a lot of the Tongans that come here from Tonga. They come here and whatever they know is what they know, but all they have to do is show them. All they have to do is see things, see how things are done, and then they're hands-on, they learn it, and then they get better at it, and then they get better at it, and then they become professionals. Anybody who comes from Tonga who are just farmers or just whatever they were in Tonga, with hands-on experience and hands-on learning, they actually become better at what they do.
Roman
That would have
Reigns.
helped you in society to not only be ambitious, but to be industrious, to improve your ability to do things, to improve your craft, whatever craft that it might be. Crazy thing about that old lady dying is the fact that the town, everybody felt relieved that she was dead because they didn't want to kill her or put her to death because she was probably related to a lot of them. But at the same time, they were relieved that she's gone, not by their own hands, but that she's gone and she can't be there to bother them any longer. Perhaps they believe that she's at peace, that she's, gone to see her child and her husband and whoever else that left her behind earlier. Everybody was at peace with it. Not in a cruel way, which is kind of weird to say. Is that a cruel thing to think or to do about a woman? Knowing how society is in Tonga at that time, you would think so. But for them, it was just a relief. So they're prepped for war and they're ready to attack Nuku'alofa. They have a whole ceremony. They have a ceremony with kava, with the religious leaders and everything to invoke the gods to come and help them, to be with them. So all of Hapai was told to meet in Nomuka. They have 14 large canoes from Lifuka, along with Tupo Niwas from Vava'u, and that adds up to about 50 large canoes. 4 of the large canoes, they had little cannons, the carronades on them, with
50 large canoes and what? Maybe a couple hundred people on each one. How many? Maybe 100? Maybe 100?
Maybe 100 or 50 or
So let's go with 50.
50 and about what's it, 100 canoes, large canoes.
50. So you're talking about 20, anywhere between 2,500 warriors to 5,000 max, right? If
Yes,
it's 100.
yes.
So that's not a small little force there. That's a decent sized
Yeah,
group right there.
especially when you combine Hapai and Babao. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
suspect around that number. Yeah.
So how many people do you think are on those islands at that time?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I wouldn't think it was that big, but who knows? Who knows?
Because I mean, if you take 3,000 men,
Mm,
um, war aged men, so let's say what 18 to 40.
mm.
I mean, if you have a devastating battle, I mean, what percentage of the population? That's got to be only like, let's say, only like 10,000 or 10% of the population. You think?
Mm.
So if that's the case, you're looking at 25 to 30 to 50,000 people. 25 to 30,000 people, which would
Mm.
be relatively close to what it is now today.
Yeah, yeah. I would say, or because I know most of the population have moved to Tongatapu. Yeah, would it be the same back in those days? I would suspect there'd be a lot more people that lived in
Because right
Hawaii.
now,
Wow.
if I remember correctly, there's only, I mean, it's only been 100,000 in Tonga for forever, right? And
Yeah,
60,000 live on Tongatapu and
correct.
Ewa.
Mm.
So 40,000. And I'm just trying to think because it doesn't make sense that you would take 50% of your population,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
I don't know. I mean, how many? That's interesting. I wonder how many people were
Yeah,
living
yeah, yeah. I'm not too
on
sure about that.
Hapai and Vavao. Because I mean, yeah, that's, let's say 25,000, 2,500 warriors.
Mm.
Yeah, one would hope it's only 10% of the population. You go and you guys die, then Hapai and Vavao will be a population deficit for
Yeah, yeah.
2 generations, 3 maybe, to
Mm.
try and repopulate after that. I don't know.
Mm.
Just trying to see if there's any ways to kind of gauge the size of the population.
No, that's a good point. Good point. Yeah, I have no idea too. I'm not too sure on that. And yeah, and and that's why some of the other islands like Fiji, Samoa, and like Tahiti, a lot of them have really expanded population wise because they've had foreign people, the Indians in Fiji. Then you had the Chinese and the Germans, and then the British in Samoa, you know, and then also the British in Fiji, and then the French in Tahiti. So they've they've exponentially,
The population's grown
grown,
from that.
popped up. But Tonga's always kind of been steady because, yeah, we've never had a influx of foreigners due to not being colonized. So Yeah,
Mm.
being 109,000 at the moment now, right? And of course, there's population that's we've kind of grown just naturally producing it, and the excess of that have actually traveled overseas. But yeah, just to see population growth in the islands, even if you go back in the days, Tonga has always been kind of steady, but not an influx like a pop up like this
Yeah.
compared to other Pacific Island neighbors.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
The wheels. Instead of getting to Nomuga because of the peaceful winds or whatever didn't take them there, they all meet at Uiha instead. So all of out by now, plus Tuponiwa's ships and Ha'ano and everywhere else, they're all in Uiha now. They go to a malae. They call it a malae. It's a big old 4 or 5 acre plot, usually green, with a house. And when I say house, I mean like those giant huts, those big posts that hold big old with a big old roof over it, and they go meet under it, which gave Finau an opportunity to review all the warriors and take a look at them. And Mariner said a lot of them were dressed and painted like the Fijians were, like the Fijian warriors. They were painted face, painted body, and they were dressed like them with all their weapons, the clubs and the spears and everything else. Each of them would come by Finau and Tuponiwa and the chiefs that were sitting.
I wonder if that's because of the Tui Halfatai guys that are with them,
Mm, yeah,
right?
that's
And
the
have that
influence. Yeah.
Fijian influence. So sounds like the Tui Halfatai guys stayed
Yeah.
with Ulkalala and them.
Mm.
Sitting there and strike their bat down. They would strike the ground with their clubs and proclaim that they're here to fight for them and fight to the death. And this club is for so and so who's over there that they're gonna kill. And each of them, one at a time, move in and basically do some kind of small performance for the chiefs that were sitting there. And they also have like a practice fight type thing where they're fighting each other, practicing and whatnot, so that Finau and the other chiefs can see. Tuponiwa and them were sitting there watching. He said a lot of the islands had their own malae, or their own little plots of land where they do ceremonies and they meet together with the same thing, about 4 or 5 acres of green grass, and they do a lot of ceremonies and a lot of celebrations and occasions on these things. And he said Vava'u had the most mala'es. They had 14 or 15 because Vava'u itself is a big island. But everywhere else had the same thing, had mala'es for celebrations, for public get-togethers. After they do all their preparations and here in Uiha, after they showcase their weapons and showcase their moves and their battles and the play fight or whatever they're doing for Finau and Tuponiwa and all the other chiefs, Finau gets up and gives a speech. And he basically tells them not to fear death, that death should be welcomed, especially in battle, for men, for warriors, for chiefs, for the maximum of masculinity and how to feel and think like men, to be able to die in battle is the best form of death. To let them know that when they do die, they will join the other chiefs, to die in bravery so that they're not embarrassed when they run into their ancestors. So they have no shame. Die with no shame, die with honor, die with glory, so that when you do meet your ancestors, there's nothing to be embarrassed or ashamed of. He said that it's better to die in war than to be assassinated. It's better to die in war than to die of an illness that'll take your life in a few months or a few years. And stating off all the ways or the reasons that are better to die in this battle in war than any other way. 6 large ships in Uiha are ready with the warriors in Uiha, and they go to Nomuka, with which they get there in a few hours. They spend the next couple of days in Nomuka. They do the review.
How convenient that it's better to die on Ulkalala's campaign for power than to stay home and
Well,
take
that's what
care
you
of your family.
yeah. Well, that's what you do with leadership, right? You already know the bigger picture, but the common folk just see, that's my leader. Just do what he says, just do it. But yeah, definitely you gotta. It's not easy to prepare the mindset of people who are about to, most likely are gonna die. So hey, you gotta do what you gotta do as a leader to get your guys ready for what may come. Eh?
I find it interesting that a lot of the talk is similar to how the Vikings talk, right? It's better
Mm,
to die bravely in war, so you go to
mm,
Valhalla and see your ancestors. That's basically what Ulkalala is saying, right?
yeah,
You
yeah.
don't want to see your uncles and them and be, embarrassed. Oh, I died from eating too much ufi. Sorry, guys. I went to Uta too much and died from going to Uta. I didn't die fighting Tukwao and
Yeah,
his
yeah.
men.
Uh,
So yeah, it's kind of interesting. I'm wondering if that's just when there's a lot of battles, the leaders got
mm,
to come up with a story, and maybe that's a common
yeah,
story in history. You don't want
yeah,
to be embarrassed if you don't die in battle. Go die
yeah,
in battle because everybody's going to war and they need warriors. Maybe that
yeah,
was the common story for all history to motivate your guys in the front line.
yeah, yeah. No, and that's I think that's a big deal too. Even in Tonga, like embarrassing your family and stuff. And I feel like maybe that's something Tonga needs to do, like especially with youth offending. Any youth offending, you need to put them up, either plaster their name, whatever they do, so people can know, and maybe they won't commit any further crime. And then it brings attention to the family to fix that child's issue. But that's
Self-regulate.
yes, self-regulate. And if that doesn't happen, okay, take it upon the state to do whatever needs to be done to fix that issue. But I
Mm.
think that's how if I was in charge of the if I was the police commissioner in Tonga, and youth offending seems to be an issue, especially in the Nuku'alofa area. I'm good. There's going to be some shameful thing to happen, so hopefully the family can sort it out. But that's just
Hmm.
me thinking out loud. And just when Ulukalala shares with the whole, being a shame, and if you die this way, not in war, hey, looks like that thing still carry weight in Tonga today.
100%.
You again, they give speeches again, they do the whole ceremonial preparations of war while they're in Nomuka. They're about to sail to Tonga now, and now that they're ready and all of Hapai and Vava'u are gathered together, Mariner said there was about 170 canoes. A lot of them were large canoes,
Mm.
and four of the largest canoes had the mini cannons in them, had the carronades in them, and
So
now they
70 to
sail to
80
Tonga.
to that's what Mariner is saying, right? Of each in each boat, is that correct?
I don't know. Did you say that? I thought I had just heard 170 boats.
Oh, 170 boats. See, okay. See, that's a good amount. That's
That's what I'm
that's you're
saying. There had to be quite a good amount of people.
yeah. I would suspect so. Really big amount of people, because that's that's a lot of vavau and habai right there, man.
Yeah. Because I mean, if you just look at like you know, population wise, your fighting force, and obviously it's different times, but 10% of your fighting force is 10% of your population is the fighting force.
Mm,
And even then that would be maybe being very aggressive, but these are like 5,000 guys then. This
yeah,
is how do you
yeah.
feed these guys?
Well, I think if as long as you get vavau under your thing, apparently from what I hear back in the days, with vavau was very plentiful of food. So
Yeah.
I'm sure when you get a place, see hot pie to me agriculturally is difficult
Yeah,
to
because
just
the
because of the
soil is more
yes
sandy and
yes, it's difficult to cultivate um some good crops. But if you get vavau, and vavau, especially if you're not having many hurricanes and stuff, and man, vavau is really a land of plentiful, and I'm sure that can feed you a good amount of people.
and I guess I was referring to the army, Masi. Do you think those canoes just stacked with food?
Y- I would, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and that's
yeah.
why he had to do a campaign.
That's why, Tua, have you heard of that Tongan saying, what, piki piki hama, was it vai manava? It's that saying is because of people, when you're traveling in boats, and when you're making distant travel uh to reach your destination. It's pretty much, if your canoe or your boat is running out of resources or food, piki piki hama, you kind of rely on the other boat to kind of help you eat that
Mm,
eat some food, so you make the destination or to make the destination you were planning to get to. So that's why that Tongan word is pretty prominent. And I've heard it used from many people in their speeches. And I remember asking Daniela the specific meaning, and that's where it kind of came from, was from canoe traveling. So I'm assuming guys like from Vava'u and Ha'apai, when you're traveling a great distance and back and forth, Pipi Hamak, Vai Manava, you're just sharing resources amongst yourself. Maybe some had more people than others, and the others had more food, and then you kind of share, until your task or mission is accomplished. So
And
I'm sure
maybe
that they had quite a few food for that amount of
and
people.
maybe that's why Vava'u was so critical for them. That's
Yeah.
where you could get a
Yeah.
lot of the food supply for when you
Yes.
go on these annual raids.
Yeah.
And that's probably why he couldn't stay there very long, because even sounds like that because of the chaos on Tongatapu and fighting amongst themselves, there was no food on Tongatapu to take advantage of
Mm,
as an invading force. So he could probably only come and stay as long as his resources would allow him to, which
yes.
would further explain why he was not successful over the
Mm,
7 or 8 years trying to invade.
yeah. No. Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
okay.
Mariner said the winds weren't that good. It didn't take them all the way to Tongatapu, so they stopped by in Pangaimotu, which is probably a mile or so off of Nuku'alofa, away from Tonga. They stop off over there for a little bit. The people in Maufanga, which is in Tonga, hear that Finau and them are on their way over. Finau's father is buried in Maufanga. So we know Finau as Finau Ukalala. Finau's son is Finau Moengangongo. And then there's Finau Fisi, which is Ulukalala's uncle, and Finau Fisi's brother is Finau Maufanga. And he's buried in Maufanga, in Tonga. The people in Maufanga, those are peaceful people who live near the cemetery of the kings, but they do hear that Ulukalala's on his way. So they prepare a ship and they go over and meet him and take things to him that he needs. If you're in Maufanga, everybody knows, and they're all suspicious the same way, that no war, no battle can happen on those sacred grounds because all the chiefs and the old kings are buried there. And if anybody that were there that were enemies, even if it was battle, they weren't allowed to fight there. They weren't allowed to battle in Maufanga near the cemetery of the kings. If they were to meet there, they would meet there. And
Maufanga, that's not too far from where the Tuitonga's first settlement
Yeah.
was, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I wouldn't be
Tuputonga is in
surprised.
that area.
Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if how Mount Fanga became like a sacred place, if some Tangaloa were also living in settled in those areas, and maybe even buried in some of those sites, because we don't really
Yeah.
know exactly where Tangaloa and how many, but that's what I'm assuming. That's what I'm
Yeah,
assuming.
interesting.
Mm.
they would be friends. As long as they were in that area, they were friends. Where they buried people, those are called faitokas. And they had faitokas on each island where chiefs or kings or hows were buried. And it was the same for any faitoka. You weren't allowed to fight near those areas on the property. And if you were to meet on those properties, it would be in peace as friends. So if anybody were enemies, if they had relationships or relations of those who are buried, there is any kind of enemy activity, it wouldn't happen there. It would always happen somewhere else, because they believe that it's a curse to fight on or near a faitoka. It was a curse to the family. It could be a curse of death or a curse of whatever else to your family and to your people if you ever fought on or near Faitoka. They leave Pangaimotu and now they get to the northern side of Tongatapu, which is just a little far off of Nuku'alofa, even though they could see it from where they were, with the Faitoka and Maufanga. They can also see the enemies preparing in Nuku'alofa, knowing that Finau and them are going to get there, which means if that's the case, then they've heard the news, or they know, either were prepared for the season or heard that Finau and his warriors are coming to fight them, as he had a habit to do so annually. They get to Maufanga, and Finau and some of the chiefs go to the cemetery, to the Faitoka. They get there, and Mariner was with them, and he said they wrap themselves with mats. Now, if you go to a funeral these days, if you're part of the family of the one who passed away, that family you can tell because they wrap themselves in bigger mats. When they bury each other also, they wrap them in mats too, and converse with the dead in their costume or their uniform of death, as if they're putting themselves in the same position that the dead are buried in, and walking over to Finau Ukalala's father's grave, Finau Maufanga, and they all sat down. Werner said he watched them perform the ceremony of the tuki, which is basically they sat there, they contemplated, and for the next couple of minutes, they would punch themselves in the face quietly, not making any sound, whether they're thinking of the battle or for assistance or for help or respect. They would sit there and they would punch themselves in the face like this. Hey. a piece of iron, bruh. But they would hit themselves in the face, and that's what
Ah,
was
yeah,
called the
ah,
ceremony of the
yeah.
Toki. After a few minutes, one of the chiefs would speak on behalf of Finau, telling Finau's father, or talking to the grave of Finau's father, telling them, your son is here. We hope that he's not doing Tonga any wrong. We hope he's not sinning against the chiefs or the kings or the ancestors, as he is here to fight his enemies. Finau has motives of ruling. He describes to Finau's father, please be with us. May the ancestors be with us. May you be with us. May the souls and the spirits of those who have passed on, the leaders and the kings and the chiefs, be with us as we go and fight our enemies.
What are your thoughts on that? That he seems to be thinking he's doing a service
Mm, mm,
to Tonga. Or at least
yeah.
that's what I'm kind of hearing from what the conversation is he's hoping he's not offending anyone. He feels
Mm,
like he's doing a service,
mm.
even though they just assassinated
Tuguaho, the Tuigon Polo.
yeah, like,
No,
and
it's
then
interesting.
he's
Yeah,
chasing off these guys that are in Ha'apai and Vava'u.
yeah.
Some of them are running away to Ha'amoa. Kind of,
Mm,
it's almost like you're feeling like there's a them versus us. Like there's, you know what I mean?
mm,
That's what I'm saying. It's kind of a weird thing.
mm. No, because I'm thinking, did did Ulkalala? Because obviously his dad is buried there. I'm thinking, is he trying to reclaim something maybe that his great grandfather or his father had maybe some influence in Tongatapu before essentially kind of starting from Ha'apai and the outer islands? I don't know. That's what I'm kind of thinking. That's why he doesn't feel like he's not ruining
Order.
relationships or
Yeah.
order or anything. That's why he feels like he's doing some
Justified.
he justified, or he's doing a righteous mission with his annual attacks on Tongatapu and stuff. I don't know. I feel like maybe it is, because I do find that interesting. I could, like I said, I'm just giving my opinion, what I'm giving, presumably could have happened or not. But I don't know. That's what I'm thinking out loud. I don't know if you had any
Yeah.
different
I mean, I
thoughts on
wish
that.
these are one of the few times I wish I was better at genealogy to be able to be like, oh yeah,
Mm,
he comes from this guy, and maybe is who, whether it's the Tuikanukupolu side or from the
yeah.
Tuihadakalaua, or even
Mm,
maybe a relative. Obviously, they're all relatives of the Tuitonga. They're all family.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it just seems interesting that in his mind he's serving Tonga by what he's doing.
Mm,
Now granted, he has his own, like Kolo is saying, he has his own personal motives, but it seems like there is close enough of a justification to say, no, what I'm really doing is helping Tonga overall.
mm, mm.
Interesting.
Yeah. Very interesting.
I mean, he says to Finau's father, or he says to the grave, that Finau has done everything possible or everything necessary religiously and for the people. He's always
See,
been good for Tonga, or
Mm,
for Hapai. The people love him. He spent his life trying to serve, trying to unite, and says all these good things about Finau. After he's done speaking, one of the attendants comes around and he grabs a kava branch, a piece of kava, and he picks it up and he takes it and puts it on the mound of Finau's father's grave. And then he comes back and sits down. After he does that, the rest of them, or whoever had kava, pulled the kava out from where they had branches of them and went and set it upon the grave. I've seen that in funerals nowadays here in America. We pound it into powder and they're in Ziploc bags. At a funeral, somebody would bring, if I were to come and show respect to somebody who has passed away, one of the attendants would come and bring a bag of kava and put it in front of me. If I came with my family and the people and we came to show respect and show love to the family who has somebody that passed away, they would have somebody, after the exchanging of conversation and of speeches, they would have somebody bring a bag of kava and put it in front of me. I would then tell them to turn back around and take the kava back so that you can use it for whatever responsibility that the family needs it for. Kava in those days were used in ceremonial purposes, for religious purposes, for, as you can tell, for the way that they drank kava back then. They drink it all the time. For the purposes of religious meetings and getting together and knowing that kava, in the kava circle, nothing but peace and conversation exists, no matter how heated it might be. The responsibility of the kava itself is so that conversation can happen, is so that planning can happen, is so that responsibilities can be spoken of and talked over. And that's why if I brought my family to a funeral and somebody put a bag of kava in front of me, I would tell them to come back and take it and use it for the responsibilities of bringing people together to converse or talk about planning or whatever it is they need it for. Kava has always been something that we've gotten together and has held us together, and we're giving it and putting it on top of the grave to indicate or signify those tokens. After the ceremony of at Faitoka and after the ceremony of the Toki and the kava and everything, leaving it there, they make their way back down to the beach where everybody's preparing. Everybody, whoever's on the ships or on the canoes, on the beach, preparing their weapons, the canoes themselves, practice.
What are your what one of the things that came to my mind when he's talking about Takava, like this is one of the reasons why I'm a big believer there was a unified Polynesian nation, is how uniform the recognition of the role of kava is in Polynesian society. Like Lolo is mentioning there, that's how you conducted yourself politically, religiously, socially,
Mm,
was through the kava. And so the fact that it was so fundamental across the board, and that's how you conducted in official events
yeah.
and social events, political, religious, that just to me is one of many indicators of a organized central driving government that shared social, political, and religious norms.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was what was coming to my mind when he was talking about the kava.
Yeah. No, no. And just to add on to that, that's why Polynesia is known with the word kava, because that seems to be the the important ingredient to legitimize a certain event. So like if you're doing an event of funeral purposes, you gotta have some kava.
Mhm.
Uh, ceremonial wedding, you gotta have some kava. Initiate or installation of a title, you gotta have some kava. So that is why that word kava is universally recognized in Polynesia, is because that's and it only reinforces the argument of Polynesia being a nation, because that word is the same throughout all Polynesia, maybe except um, Fiji, right? Because Fiji had, it was kind of a mix. It was kind of like that bordering between
Yeah, it had the
Polynesia
kava
and
and
Melanesia.
Yangona or whatever is the
Yes,
other
yes,
name they
yes.
had for it.
But with the tongue, but with now you know that last episode we did last week, I guess with Maka, obviously kava was probably used with those Tongan migration, to
Mhm.
Fiji. It was very significant, but obviously the word kava is still recognized there, but obviously the word that's used most of the time in their common language is the Yangona. So yeah, no, that's what I was thinking. That kava, without kava, it's not. It's almost like a missing link if, in order to legitimize a certain event in those
Yeah.
days. And even today, it's still you still see kava. You still see many Tongan families who are able to do it, doing like a kava mari or a kava. Um, a kava at the funeral. There's always when you're giving your tribute or your hala kind of thing. There's always some kava there you can have, but yeah, kava is still significant in today's culture. And obviously, when you know institutionalize or create a title, you gotta have some kava. But yeah, that's my
No,
thoughts there.
100%. And here's an interesting thought that just came to my mind, Mussy. Because
Mm,
kava is, when you listen to the installation of, excuse me, of like noble titles, they say that the kava represents the land, right?
mm,
And so basically, when you're drinking it, you're drinking the land. So you're, in a sense, carrying the land within you, and with the land comes responsibility, and
mm,
with the land comes sacrifice, right? And I find it interesting when you just think about the kava experience. You don't drink kava because it tastes
mm,
delicious. It's
mm,
actually a painful and
mm.
a bitter
Taste.
experience right off the front, right? And so it's true also about responsibility.
Mm,
Responsibility is not responsibility is not, oh man, it's all sunshine and roses. It's in many ways a painful, bitter experience,
mm,
right? But you do it because of your commitment and your covenant to the family, to the culture, to the
mm.
people, whatever you want to call it. And though it's a bitter experience up front, like they say, fuakavenga,
Yeah,
it's hard, and a lot of people, they shrink from
yeah,
it. But because it is bitter, it's painful. However, if you are willing and able to endure that on the front end,
yes.
what's the reward? It is a feeling of calm. It is a feeling of accomplishment. It's a feeling of, you know what? I did what I was meant to do, and I did
Mm,
it well, and I'm proud. And that's also the experience of the kava experience as well. And along the way, as you endure the bitter, with the right people and the right conversations, you're learning a lot. You're growing mentally, spiritually, and physically through the experience. So just thought that was kind of an interesting when
yeah.
you look at the purpose of kava in the social, religious, the political sense, also in the practical sense, when you look at the drinking of kava itself, that experience, it's kind of an interesting parallel across the board.
Mm, mm.
So yeah, that was just something that came to mind. Any thoughts,
No,
Masi, or we
cool.
want to jump right back into it?
No, no, no. Good thoughts. Good thoughts too.
Seeing
Oh,
No, nothing to add, Malo.
10 4.
whatnot, and they can see and hear the guys at Nuku'alofa doing the same thing. They're preparing. They're preparing their weapons. They're getting loud. They're screaming from that side, and these guys are yelling in battle mode and battle cries from this side, and they're yelling at each other from afar off. These guys from Malfanga and those guys from Nuku'alofa, they're both sharing the war whoop. They're war whooping at each other. They're chi-hooing each other. They're chi-hooing from over there, and we're chi-hooing from over here, and we're ready. They're ready, and it's about to go down. Some guys were in the water, splashing the water with their back.
So they were chi-hooing, like we talked about earlier, right? Like
Yeah, you're
when
there
you
to.
do
You're
that,
not. Yeah,
it's not a pleasant
yeah,
or positive thing. It is something bad's about to happen.
yeah, yeah. It's definitely. You're not there with the intention to be respectful. You're there to cause chaos, and something's coming for you. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Bats or with their spears, they're both ready now and prepared to do this. Marin describes the fortress of Nuku'alofa. There are many of them in Tonga. Some of them were built in squares and some of them were built in circles. Nuku'alofa fort or Nuku'alofa garrison was built in a giant circle, and a lot of them patterned their build and the strength and the fortification of their forts around Tonga after the Nuku'alofa fort. About 100 yards from the water, about 4 or 5 acres, they're made with bamboo reeds. So they're cutting bamboos in half and they're opening it up and they're tying them together and they're making a fence type thing with the bamboo. They have giant posts that surround the entire kolo, giant posts that go all the way up 10 to 12 feet high. The bamboo reeds, he said, they're tied together and they were wrapped around all these posts that gave it a fencing type look and protection. There are 4 giant openings, 2 on the front and back and 2 on each end, and they had smaller openings also. The posts were set a foot and a half from each other, but it surrounded the entire fort with the wrapping of the reeds all the way around. Right outside of the wall, there was a giant ditch. So it goes fort, ditch, and right outside of that ditch is another wall that they built the same way with posts and reeds. Where the giant openings were, they cut down coconut trees, put them in half and stacked them on each other, and they built sliding doors with it where the big openings were. That also served as a protection too. Right outside of the second wall was another ditch. So if you approach Nuku'alofa from the outside, you would see a giant ditch, 12 by 12, a wall with the reeds, and then another ditch 12 by 12 with the main wall around
Mm.
Nuku'alofa itself. At the top above every door, there were giant platforms for where somebody can stand. They had railings and it had also openings where you could throw things. So bow and arrows, spears, big stones, or whatever. They had a platform every 15 feet, openings for where people can stand and attack from there. So they were ready. They've been fighting Finau for the past 7 or 8 years or however long it was annually, to where they know how to build it now and how to prep up for it. Every 15 feet was a platform. Above every big door was a platform, and it had reed walls with openings. And every 15 feet there was another platform with reed walls and openings so that they can attack from there. And the ditches were made so that the dirt makes another wall on both ditches. The dirt was collected and made another wall just on the outside to
Very
protect them
interesting. Yeah.
from the enemies. The entire walls on both sides, both walls, were decorated or ornamented with sharp objects, with shells broken up and pasted onto the walls. Perhaps for when anybody gets close, they cut themselves. If anybody got closer to the ditch, they would have to climb down the ditch and where they can attack. So they're prepared. They're ready. The fort's ready. Vava'u and Hapai is ready with their 170 canoes, and now Nuku'alofa is ready. Now they're ready for battle. They're ready for war. So we've come across chapter 3, and now we're ready for a first battle that Mariner's able to be a part of. The other two battles with Tui Halafatai, the Fijians, he heard those stories from Finau, Tuponiua, and the other chiefs and other people as well. He heard about the Fijians from the old people, the OGs. He heard about Tuku'aho and how Tuku'aho, the behavior of Tuku'aho and how he was. He heard about how Tuku'aho died and that battle that happened. How Tui Halafatai met up, they went to war. He heard about those. This will be the first one he's actually a part of. And now he's officially a son of Finau Ulukalala, now that Finau Ulukalala has given him to one of his most important wives that's able to provide him with everything he needs. So now we're ready for battle. We're ready for war. That's chapter 3. Till next time, my friends.
Gee. Tau toki si o malo malo lolo.
Maria, Maria.
Hey, looks like Noah is, having his own. We're over here talking about Tokiukamea and William Mariner, and Noah is over here, you know, talking about Tu'imanua. We've already put Tu'imanua to sleep, I think. But
No, no. I
anyways,
mean, lucky Noah's not alive when Ulukalala is alive, because remember, if you do something Mashori or doing something that's not everyone doing, he tell another Hawaiian to tell a Hawaiian to shoot shoot that person. If you're
hey,
not part of the plan or the building a harmonious village, oh yeah, not good, not good.
that's an interesting comment there by Brown Monk. I did cross my mind a little bit, especially when they were saying they were putting the wall of dirt and then like the reeds on top. That's very
Mm-hmm.
similar to Captain Moroni, right? With building up the walls much higher, obviously, and then putting posts
Mm-hmm.
on top. So yeah, I can see that a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, but very interesting. Yeah, I mean, to me, really enjoy Lolo's series on this. I think he does a great job
Yeah.
telling the story and bringing it to life, and him taking the
Mm-hmm.
time on that. Really interesting to kind of see how the political nature of Tonga back in the chaos, because like you were mentioning earlier, Masi,
Mm,
this is nowhere near the prime of the Tuitonga, the prime time of the Tuitonga. So
mm,
definitely things have decayed significantly. Um, and the people are suffering. And as always, whenever there's chaos and there's lack of leadership, the people are the ones that suffer the most. And honestly, it sounds like Ha'apai and Vava'u are flourishing in many ways, and
yeah.
Tongatapu is suffering because
Yeah.
of the chaos, right? All the fractured power and
Mm,
the warring that's happening. It's basically falling into what we would typically describe Fiji back in the day, right? Because
mm,
that was a typical thing in Fiji, where it was the many forts and the constant battlings that were going on that led to the
Mm.
fractured power there. But any closing thoughts, Masi?
No, I appreciate Kaba University's input, and I think I agree with you, too. He's doing a good job, explaining and giving uh, uh, an example of how the story of Mariner kind of bring to life and in perspective, so that people can follow and understand more about that era, what was happening in Tonga. But I appreciate the platform, Tua, so that we can talk about this.
Hmm.
If any of our comments can maybe help other people understand, and also the comments through the live of our viewers can also shed some light on certain areas for other people to learn more. That's always helpful, and this is why we do this. But yeah, I'm just grateful for this opportunity to be here. But Malo.
Yep. Malo, Masi. And we were hoping to have a program with Lolo, but his schedule wasn't available. We are looking to have a U.S. Political commentary
Mm,
episode with the elections coming up in the U.S. Maybe we'll talk about politics
mm.
in other countries as well. We're hoping for that next week. And then we also are working on a couple of
Interviews
guest
coming up.
interviews to come up here. But once again, um, appreciate everyone's contributions. Appreciate all the comments, all the likes. As we mentioned earlier, that goes a long way with every like, every comment, every share. And
Mm.
as always, as we close, we always invite everyone to stay curious,
Yes,
ask the
sir.
bold questions,
Yes,
and
sir.
be a truth seeker and go wherever the truth leads
Mm.
you. And with that being said, till next time, guys, have a good one.
Okay.
Peace.